Hey everybody. So I wanted to show you the new cube that I'm using, and this is simply a more complex version of the one that I have been using. And it's just to let you know, it's not just fabricated out of nothing, but it is based on the information that I've gathered so far in the cathedrals, whether it be St. Joseph Cathedral or whether it be, for example, some of the artwork that we've seen. In fact, I'll show you a couple of examples of that right now. Now, this artwork that you're seeing, some of it's really old. Most of it's probably more than 100 years old. However, one thing I want you to notice is you guys are probably familiar with seeing in some of this old artwork these halos around people's heads. What you probably didn't notice about it, though, was that the halos are they are more than just a halo, but they're showing geometry. Okay, so here's an example. These images are normally called Mary, the Ark of the Covenant, but actually they're not originally from the church. They go all the way back, and they actually kind of stole this stuff from, well, an example of that would be Ishtar, if you're familiar with that statue. But it's obvious that they are using the Metatron's cube, and they have been over the centuries. And so here is an example of the of Mary, the Ark of the Covenant, and you're going to see the detail here pop out when I show you this. So one of the things that you're going to notice, they see those rings that they have around them. There's a larger circle, and then you have inner circles. The inner circles are a certain size. So if you notice, her halo is a certain size. His is. The rings that he's in are a certain size. And notice this little guy down here. And if you'll notice the geometry of the wings, it follows all this stuff. Now, what she is typically showing is, and the reason she's got her arms out, and you'll see this in most all of the images that you find, is she is showing the Trinity. Okay, so if we take this image and begin to take it down a little bit, you can see what they are doing. So this halo that you see right here is the halo around her head. You can see this little one down here, and Jesus, or the child down here, is always the little star. So if I turn her off for a second, there's a little star, and depending on where I place this or how I scale it, because I've got 3 stars going on here, right? I've got the big one, I've got an intermediate one, and I've got a small one. So I'm kind of using the one that has more detail to show you. But she is right here, and she's got her arms stretched out to both of these, which is the Trinity, and we have Jesus, or the little kid, right inside here. So let's turn that on again. Okay. So he would have more rings as well, maybe if I moved her up a little bit. Okay, but let's take a look at some of the detail here. So you can see that the wings of this angel or winged creature as it moves around. You can see its head in there. She is encompassing these rings. I want you to notice how they're showing 1 ring, 2 ring, 3 ring, and see the level and the width of it compared to the rings that I'm showing. This is kind of what I'm noticing about these rings, and there is this cascading effect that happens as you move in and out. The rings as well, between whether they are large or whether they're small or not, are also changing. So just wanted to let you know that what I'm showing you here is in Metatron's cube is based off of the stuff that I'm seeing. So all this detail that you see and the way these rings are working has a lot to do with that. So what I noticed last night is that I noticed that you don't really need the pyramid at all in order to be able to show the Earth moon ratio when you're looking at this thing. All you need to do is be aware of the geometry that you're looking at, and after playing with it for a while, and I knew it was in there. I just had to find it. I was able to find this thing. So let me show it to you real quick. Okay, so if we're looking at this whole thing and we assume that this right here is the Earth that I've got highlighted in blue, then if you'll notice, it's actually taking up one of those rings. And these rings, as you've noticed, as you get smaller and smaller, they're just cascading, so they're just repeating themselves. And that's the reason why they're looking closer together as you get towards the center. Okay? But at this level, if we assume this is the Earth, and don't mind this red hexagon that you see up there, that's just to remind me that I'm looking at something else. And I'll go over that with you at a later time. So, okay, so let's take the blue Earth here, right there, and we're going to duplicate it, and then we're going to multiply it times the 27.27%, which is actually what the moon's size is, right? And then we'll go ahead and make it white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move it up right on top of the Earth. There we go. I need to see it snap. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and move it all the way up. And I want you to notice something really interesting. Because the way Metatron's cube is designed, the capstone that sits on top of the moon is actually not needed because it is provided naturally in the cube. And this may give you a little bit of insight into why I have the red hexagon there, but I've already pasted this information on Facebook. So the gap that you see between the moon and the very edge boundary is the same gap that you would see between the capstone and what you see as the moon. And so you'll notice that the capstone is also done a little bit differently because you have this thing that runs up to the top, which is accounting for the casing stones, and then above that you have the invisible capstone that's gone. So let me show that to you real quick. So I'm going to show you kind of what this cube can do because of the artwork and stuff like that we've seen. So this gives us a lot of information right here because this tells us that the ratio of the Earth, Moon, and the geometry that we see in the cube can give us a lot of information. So right now I'm going to show you how the pyramid's geometry really shines when we take a look at what we've done here. This cube doesn't really stand out until you take it past its first level, and that is when you start adding the rings and you start cascading it inward. Okay, and that when you do that and you do it correctly, it shows all kinds of stuff, and we'll go into more of that later. So here's the moon, and I'm going to take this geometry off real quick. And so here's what it looks like. And I believe my pyramid's set up a little bit more towards the center to show you more detail. And so here is the way that the new cube looks. The things that are highlighted to show some of the geometry when I put the pyramid on. Notice the gray and red rings. And this is important because this shows us, this will really make the pyramid stand out in its geometry when I turn it on. So let me turn that on real quick. And so here's what we see. And what you'll notice about these gray and red rings are that the pyramid wraps around them. Okay? So for example, on the bottom right corner here, you can see the pyramid wrapping around this larger gray ring, right? And then resting on top of the red one, which is inside the gray ring above it, right? And that gives us the perfect angle that we need in order to reach this point up here. And in case you don't remember, the hexagon, I'll point it out to you real quick. This line that you see right here coming up is the hexagon. Okay. Here is the top of where it's cut off, but the line that runs up the pyramid runs up to this point because he's accounting for the casing stones. Above this line right here where you see Kethra disappearing into the nothingness, this is the very tip, which included the casing stones and the cap. Okay, so if we look at the pyramid, let's see, we'll turn it on to normal. Okay, so here's just the pyramid right here, and we'll move it up a little bit higher. There it is. So this line runs all the way up until it gets to this line right here. Okay, and then this area above it, that is the area that disappears into nothingness. So if we go back and look at the moon right here, there's actually a couple points at the top we have to look at, more than what you would normally think. There's the part that sits on top of the head of the moon, but that's also taken care of by the hexagon that you see inside Metatron Cube's geometry. Then there's the point that reaches at the very tip, which is Kethra, right? But then he's also accounted for the part that's above that that's missing, and that's this part right here. So you can see the geometry is extremely accurate here, okay? And it's all inside Metatron's cube. Okay, so let's back out real quick. This must be taking up a lot of memory here. So as you can see, the geometry, and I still may need to make some more adjustments as time goes on, but the important thing is to see that based on the artwork, that what we see is that it's very important to, with Metatron's cube, to take it and duplicate it, or turn it into many cubes all embedded inside a larger one, right? That's exactly what we're seeing when we take a look at Mary, the Ark of the Covenant. That's what we take a look at when we look at the actual pyramid geometry sitting on top of this thing right here, with the base of it wrapped around the larger rings and its sides resting on the smaller ones. Without this smaller and larger cube type thing, this would not work at all, and neither would all this other geometry that we see up at the top. So this is what we're seeing in the artwork. This is what's really important when we take a look at it. And so anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to show you. This cube right here, until I see other reasons why maybe I need to make some adjustments with, it's very possible I may need to add more smaller rings inside these larger ones here, just to make sure. And I can look at images of Mary, the Ark of the Covenant, things like that. They give out all kinds of information as far as that goes. So I just wanted to show this to you and show you kind of the way that it works so far, and show you the geometry of the pyramid and how it really shines with this Metatron's cube. This Metatron's cube is extremely important, and I hope now you're seeing that they've used it all of these years and all the way back into ancient Egypt, ancient Samaria, places like that. I mean, I can see indications of it that I won't go into now, but we'll look at later. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great weekend. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon.